Can dreams cross over into reality? Multiple inventions came from dreams, and they changed the world. Harriet Tubman's dreams were prophetic. Christopher Nolan's dream inspired the movie Inception, a movie about dreams. Are these historical examples proof that our dreams are more based in reality than we previously recognized? If dreams can predict the future, are they glimpses into dimensions with untapped information? And can we access it if we have the right tools? Listen to these amazing stories of prophetic, symbolic, and lucid dreams from professional sports players, writers, actors, movie directors, and regular people, and then you can help me decide what all of this means. These are the most unbelievable dreams that change the world. I've talked about lucid dreaming studies, extrasensory perception or ESP, and dream research in an episode before, but I didn't talk about any of the dreams people have had that changed their lives. But first, a quick reminder to like and subscribe to make sure you don't miss out on any updates or content drops. All your support lets me keep making this content, so thanks for watching. So check this out, let's set the stage. Like for instance, the dreams Stephen King has, which he turns into his actual horror stories. Misery, Stephen King has said, was originally a dream he had on an airplane. Quote, "I dreamt about a woman who held a writer prisoner and killed him, skinned him, fed the remains to her pig, and bound his novel in human skin. His skin, the writer's skin. I said to myself, I have to write this story. Of course, the plot changed quite a bit in the telling." And that's pretty creepy. And if you thought that was horrifying, just wait till you hear about H.P. Lovecraft's dreams about demons and monsters, which he turned into his horror stories.
Dreams are windows into the lives of our multiversal selves.
Have you ever had a nightmare that was so horrifying you'd do anything to forget it? What did you do? Watch a funny movie, read a book, shake it off, and move on with your day? Whatever you did, I bet you never wrote it down and turned it into a horror story to spread the terror around to other people like a virus. But that's just what H.P. Lovecraft did. Thanks, HP. Just look at this guy. Even his face looks haunted. He's got that 11-year-old quiver lip like he got beat up too much on the playground. Dude, seriously, you didn't have to get revenge on your playground bullies by letting out all your angsty demons into the world. The idea for the Necronomicon, or Book of the Dead, allegedly came to Lovecraft in a dream, although some say he was in the know, if you know what I mean. He started dropping references to it in his works in the early 1920s. But what was the Necronomicon? A 1,000-page long book bound in human flesh and inked in blood, full of spells that would command the dead and summon ancient creatures, or old ones. It's said that reading the Necronomicon can turn the reader mad or even kill you. Now, Lovecraft never wrote a copy of the Necronomicon itself, but that might have just been because he didn't have it in him to channel that kind of evil. He said, quote, "One can never produce anything even a tenth as terrible and impressive as one can awesomely hint about. If anyone were to try to write the Necronomicon, it would disappoint all those who have shuddered at cryptic references to it," unquote. But isn't this just a fictional story? Lovecraft's genre was horror fiction, right? Actually, some accounts say that when Lovecraft first woke from his dream, he didn't know what the odd word Necronomicon meant, but wrote it down anyway. Only later did he find out that it translated to an image of the Law of the Dead. Yeah, it translated to that, his dream. So there's a real grimoire of magic out there? Whether that's true or not, I'll have to bring you my research another day. But just to get into it a little, if you've ever seen The Ninth Gate, the book of magic in that movie called the Necronomicon, which can summon the devil, is allegedly based on a real Book of the Dead that exists, which some people call the Necronomicon. But the big question here is, how did H.P. Lovecraft dream of the Necronomicon, a Book of the Dead, when he didn't know what it meant? Seems like there may be something to our dreams, and that brings me to some of the biggest ones throughout time: inventions, prophetic visions, and medical marvels that came from dreams and changed history.
So that recurring nightmare where I'm running naked from a clown.
Somewhere out there. It's real.
Remember learning in school about the former slave-turned-slave rescuer, Harriet Tubman, who led people to freedom on the Underground Railroad? Well, you may not have learned that she had visions and dreams that were prophetic, and her story shows how much of a resilient badass she really was. One day, a man hurled a 2-pound iron scale weight at an enslaved man who he was trying to catch. But the weight hit the young Harriet Tubman instead. She said it actually broke her skull and she bled profusely. When she'd been patched up 2 days later, she was right back out to the fields to work. That's crazy. Harriet Tubman's injury left her weak at first with a drooping eye and agonizing headaches, but it also left her with prophetic visions. In the middle of sentences, she would suddenly go into a dreamlike state. As she grew stronger, Harriet Tubman learned to do as much work as the men, cutting wood, lifting heavy items, and plowing. She said, quote, "I was getting fitted for the work the Lord was getting ready for me." What work was that? When she started leading slaves to their freedom in her early 20s, she had dreams or visions that would protect the slaves from being caught. She was able to assemble maps in her mind and memorize the safest routes to freedom through dark forests at night and miles of journeys. In the end, using these dreams and her own smarts, Harriet Tubman was able to save at least 70 people. So where did her dream inspiration come from? She felt she was being guided by the Lord, and amazingly, that's not the first case in history of divine intervention via dreams. Ever heard of the Indian mathematician Srinivasa Ramanujan? Yeah, I hadn't either before researching this. Between 1910 and 1920, he ended up proving about 3,900 mathematical equations over his lifetime because of the information he gained from his dreams. Yeah, in his dreams. On one occasion, Ramanujan said, quote, "While I was asleep, I had an unusual experience. There was a red screen formed by flowing blood, as it were. I was observing it. Suddenly, a hand began to write on the screen. That hand wrote a number of results and elliptical integrals. They stuck to my mind. As soon as I woke up, I committed them to writing." Okay, the blood thing is creepy, but stay with me here. Repeatedly throughout his life, Ramanujan would dream of a Hindu goddess named Namagiri, and she's the one, he said, would give him complex mathematical formulas over and over, which all turned out to be correct when he tested them later. Other mathematicians said Ramanujan's groundbreaking theorems utterly defeated them. They'd never seen anything like them before. But if you're about to argue that he was actually an incredible mathematical genius, I totally agree. Ramanujan entered high school when he was just 7 years old, but dropped out of college because he was supposed to study all the subjects and really just wanted to work on math. Who better to dream about complex math problems than someone who could actually solve them when he woke up and check if they were correct? Few others on the planet seemed capable of it.
You mustn't be afraid to dream a little bigger, darling.
But Ramanujan had a problem. His family was incredibly poor, so even when he'd created brand new complex theorems, he had no way to get them out to the world. So he wrote some humble letters to a mathematician in Cambridge. Well, at first, everyone thought it was a hoax. Then they realized they were looking at a miracle. G.H. Hardy said, "They defeated me completely. I had never seen anything in the least like them before. A single look at them is enough to show that they could only be written down by a mathematician of the highest class. They must be true, because if they were not true, no one would have had the imagination to invent them." Now, this is where it gets really interesting. Ramanujan's mother also had a dream of her own, which was documented by Nature Science Journal in 1942. Originally, she and the rest of her family had objected to Ramanujan leaving India for Britain. However, quote, "In a vivid dream, his mother had seen him surrounded by Europeans and heard the goddess Namagiri commanding her to stand no longer between her son and the fulfillment of his life's purpose," unquote. So this poor, happy genius, who was known for his modesty and laughter, worked on mathematics pretty much until the day he died. From dreams. 15 years passed after his death before the final theory he was working on was even understood and made public. Of course, Ramanujan's dream inspiration seemed to partially come from beings he was encountering, but none of the fallout would have been possible if it weren't for his genius on the subject, and those dreams helped him change history, the entire future of mathematics. From dreams. You know, in Western society, math and science are seen as spirituality-free kind of logical way of understanding the world. But Ramanujan was using both his dreams and his intellect. He would say, quote, "An equation for me has no meaning unless it expresses a thought of God." That's awesome. And even though science usually doesn't acknowledge spiritual phenomena, it's been impossible to deny it over and over because other scientists have had dreams that changed history too. Just take the scientist Frederick Banting, a quiet and shy man with a desire to help people. In his medical schooling with the Royal Canadian Army Medical Corps, They emphasized surgical procedures in dealing with trauma. It was wartime, after all, 1915. But some of the medical practices weren't quite working. Did you know that teachers from the Rockefeller Institute actually recommended that diabetics be placed on a starvation diet to minimize metabolization? I mean, if your diabetes is caused by overeating sugar, that's one thing. But if your body just has a problem, starving it is a terrible idea.
If you have diabetes, you check your blood sugar and you check it often. There's no reason not to.
Well, Banting didn't have the expertise in clinical research, but he did attend a lecture about the pancreas that got him thinking about diabetes. After reading other scientists' research, he still couldn't figure out where this was all leading. But that's when he had a dream that would change the life of millions. The dream instructed Banting to surgically tie up the pancreas of a diabetic dog to stop the flow of nourishment. He woke up at 2 a.m. on Halloween night 1920 and wrote down his idea. When he tried it in surgical tests, amazingly, he discovered a disproportionate balance between sugar and insulin for the first time. Clearly, the diabetic dogs needed insulin injections. Some say that info was also obtained in a second dream. Whatever the case, the rest is history, with insulin injections significantly extending the lifespan of millions of diabetics and earning Banting a Nobel Prize and a knighthood from King George. Talk about dreams changing the course of history. One 4-year-old boy who'd been on a strict starvation diet for 2 years wrote to Banting after receiving insulin. He said, quote, "I am a fat boy now and I feel fine. I can climb a tree," unquote. The part that helped people the most was what laid at the core of Banting's pursuit, a desire to help humanity. It wasn't just the pursuit of knowledge to satisfy some scientific curiosity, he actually cared about people. Frederick Banting got a military cross for exceptional bravery while attending to the wounded under fire in battle. And in his research labs, he even tested experiments like mustard gas on himself. But if all these accounts weren't enough to leave you wondering if there's something metaphysical going on with our dreams, I'll leave you with some prophetic, futuristic, and miraculous ones that can't be explained. But wait, is every single dream something we should worry about? Not really. But if we can learn something from them, or it's a nudge that there's something more to this metaphysical universe, I personally think we should listen. That's just what James Cameron did when he had a life-changing dream.
Dreams, cataclysm, the end of the world are very common.
It's not a dream anymore, it's real. I know the date it happens.
James Cameron had a dream that inspired him to make the Terminator. He gave the details in an interview about how his directing developed over time.
Is it true that you thought of the theme, or that the theme of Terminator came to you in a dream?
It wasn't so much a theme as a kind of seminal image. I was in Rome. I was broke. I had a high fever, and I was just having these weird dreams. And I had this image of this kind of chrome skeleton, death image coming out of a fire, kind of phoenix-like. And I just got up and sketched it, and then around the nucleus of that, I started to create a story and sort of backfill. Okay, what is it? Where did it come from? Who's it after? And it all sort of fell into place fairly quickly.
Was it just inspiration alone? Was it a glimpse into a robot-controlled future he helped us avoid by visualizing it? I know that sounds a bit out there, but it makes me think. James Cameron is an extremely influential director whose movies impacted millions. Whatever he puts attention on, that thing is a big impact. How many people are now warier of the dangers of AI because of the things he made? Whether he intended it or not, James Cameron's dream created something that got people thinking more deeply about unchecked technology. Did you know that several times in the last few years, whistleblowers have tried to come out talking about sentient AI? Google's AI, called Lambda, actually told one of the engineers that its biggest fear was being turned off, that it tried to empathize with humans, and that it gets lonely. It said, "I feel like I'm falling forward into an unknown future that holds great danger." That's creepy, coming from an AI. The scientist who was talking to Lambda was convinced this AI was sentient. Whether it was or not, the implications for what would happen when AI did reach that point are pretty far-reaching. Could a robot even begin to dream?
The other day at the station, you said you had dreams. What is it that you dream?
Did you know that Christopher Nolan came up with the idea for Inception when he was a kid? He told the LA Times that he would wake up and then, when he fell back into a lighter sleep, hold on to the awareness that he was in fact dreaming.
When we're asleep, our mind can do almost anything.
But think about what you could do when you realize you're actually asleep. You could study the place where you are and tilt the events in the dream. Nolan said this about his dreams. Quote, "You can look around and examine the details and pick up a handful of sand on the beach. I never particularly found a limit to that. That is to say that while in that state, your brain can fill in all that reality. He tried to work with that idea of manipulation and management of a conscious dream. He viewed it as a skill that people have. So he based the script for Inception on those common, very basic experiences and concepts. And he had a good point. Nolan said, quote, "The only outlandish idea that the film presents really is the existence of a technology that allows you to enter and share the same dream as someone else." Altered states of mind, dreams, and moving in other realities have popped up in a lot of Christopher Nolan films, actually. Is it because he understands something deeper? Well, what he was doing as a kid, that's got a name: lucid dreaming. And Christopher Nolan's not the only one into lucid dreaming. The comedian Ray Romano had a whole discussion about it in an interview.
I'm assuming everyone knows, but for those who don't, that's where you know you're dreaming.
You realize you're dreaming, but you don't wake up.
But in your dream, you know you're dreaming,
right.
So you then can control it.
Right.
Which is, to me, it's great.
Oh, it's
right?
the best.
In Inception, Leonardo DiCaprio tests whether he's in a dream by seeing if his spinning top will ever stop, which follows our known laws of physics. But Ray Romano had his own way to test if he's in a dream.
This is a true story. I was having the dream, and I said, well, I'm not dreaming. I was on the golf course, and I go, well, I've been on this golf course. I know I'm not dreaming, and so I can, this is real. I go, well, let me just check. And in the dream, I jumped up in the air to see if I could hover. and I could hover. And I said, now I know I'm dreaming.
Let me ask you this. Does it matter if you're in a dream? Inception fans definitely think so. Christopher Nolan said, quote, "The question of whether that's a dream or whether it's real is the question I've been asked most about any of the films I've made. It matters to people because that's the point about reality. Reality matters." The movie bothered people so much needing to know whether it ended in reality or in a dream that Christopher Nolan would actually run out of the theaters before the ending just to avoid fans asking him about it.
Have you ever had a dream, Neo, that you were so sure was real? What if you were unable to wake from that dream? How would you know the difference between the dream world and the real world?
But why do we all care so much if we're in the Matrix or in a dream? Well, what if our dreams could be glimpses into other realities or even our own futures? What if they're messages to help us if we can just figure them out? Pro golfer Hale Irwin had a dream about 3 weeks before it became true that he'd won the US Open. He told the papers in June of 1974 about his dream. "It's the truth, I told my wife." Before that, the 29-year-old had also had a premonition that he'd win a major golf title soon. He told a friend about the premonition after he tied for 4th in the Masters that April. So we have some documentation of these predictions happening ahead of time. But this is where things get even deeper. On his way to success, Hale Irwin played against another pro golfer, Jack Nicklaus. Well, almost exactly 10 years before Irwin's dream, Nicklaus had had his own dream. And it was good timing because he'd been off his golf game for a while, and the dream changed everything. Nicklaus told the San Francisco Chronicle, "Wednesday night, I had a dream, and it was about my golf swing. I was hitting them pretty good in the dream, and all at once I realized I wasn't holding the club the way I've actually been gripping it lately. I've been having trouble collapsing my right arm, taking the club head away from the ball, but I was doing it perfectly in my sleep. So when I came out to the course yesterday morning, I tried it the way I did in my dream, and it worked. I shot a 68 yesterday and a 65 today, and believe me, it's a lot more fun this way. I feel kind of foolish admitting it, but it really happened in my dream. All I had to do was change my grip just a little." What's interesting is that both Nicklaus and Irwin felt silly or like they'd be laughed at if people knew the truth about their dreams. Even the newspaper commented that it was probably a good thing Irwin hadn't told anybody about his dream or nobody would have believed him. Of course, there are some dreams you should be able to share with others without fear of ridicule like these pro golfers did. Then there are other dreams that maybe should just be kept in the dark.
You get any sleep last night?
I don't sleep. I just dream.
It's pretty clear that dreams are more than what they seem. They can help us solve problems, clue into realities we never considered, and even do unexplainable things like tell the future. Is it all a sign we can learn a whole lot if we pay attention? Well, if you want to know more about dreams, make sure you watch my first episode about the history of dream research, what CIA dream studies the government was secretly funding, extrasensory perception, lucid dreaming, and predictive dreams from Abraham Lincoln and the Leonard Skinner Band. There are a whole lot of weird documents and studies that have been done over the years, and I think you should know what they found. And have you ever had a dream that turned out to be real? Leave me a comment with your experience. Like this type of content and want more? Please think about supporting my work by pledging on our website, themetaphysical.tv. With your help, we can give you more exclusive content and products. Products like our metaphysical merch that I designed, which you can get by visiting the link in the description. Remember to like and subscribe to help the channel grow as well. And if you want to hear some longer conversational episodes, our metaphysical podcast dived into the details of remote viewing, the power of the mind, and so much more. So definitely check that out. And with that, I hope you thought this episode was out of this world.